Hello, Sensei Sarhn here. Thank you so much for subscribing to my email list. And as promised, here's a video for you to share a little bit more on the behind the scenes writing of my novel, Us. Not sure if you've read it. I think the majority of people that will subscribe to my list have read Us, but I'm conscious you may not have, so I don't want to give any spoilers away. So I want to share some stories behind that won't spoil the message and the twist and the turns of the book, so you don't miss out on the enjoyment. So the first thing I wanted to share with you was the story of the horse riding. You may, if you've read the book, remember that Olive and the black belts and the others from the dojo went to Inat's property, and she took them on a horse riding. And you may recall that Inat was handing out all the horses with the different names, and Olive was given the name Dark Death. That is actually a real story. And the story behind that was a little bit different, of course, because Olive and Inat and Boyan and Sebastian, they're not real. They're fictional story. They're not real people. But a lot of the stories and the things behind did actually happen. And the Dark Death story was actually true. So the story behind it is I was taking I think my daughter was 6 years old when this happened, and she was invited to a children's birthday party at an equestrian center. And we parents were standing behind the fence, and we're watching our children being given different horses, and sugar was given to Sally, and toffee was given to Ben, and then from the back of the paddock they bring this big massive horse out, and they said, "Oh, Willow, we're going to give you Dark Death." A 6-year-old, and there was this big hush like this. And then from the back of the room, my bellow laughter. So I was Sebastian in the role. I just burst out laughing. You're giving a 6-year-old, you're giving my daughter a name, the horse Dark Death. So that's the story that inspired that segment of the book. So another true story was the scene at the tournament. So this is where Olive and Sakura were watching the kickboxing fight, and you might remember one of the fighters was looking down towards Olive because the spectator beside Olive was yelling out obscene things and making assumptions that the fighter wasn't happy with. And Olive got the tingling behind her back, and she turned around, and he was there and said, "Hey, you, where's that friend, that big mouth friend of yours?" That actually happened to me. I was at a friend's kickboxing fight, and after his match, the guy beside me was yelling at the kickboxer, and this guy, I can't remember his name, but he was like a big bull, and he was ferocious, and he looked down at me, and I thought, "Oh, I don't feel good about this." Forgot about it. And then after the match, I got this tap on the shoulder, and it was the fighter, and he said, "Hey, woman, where's that big mouth friend of yours?" And I went, I was racing and went, "What are you talking about? Who are you thinking about?" And then it occurred to me that he meant the guy beside me who had been yelling out abuse at him through his match. And I went, I just sort of went, "Oh, mate, not me, it wasn't me. That was some guy I didn't even know." And just the fear that I had. And I remember from behind me, I heard a familiar voice said, "Oh, we don't know that guy." And I turned around, and it was all my karate friends behind me. And I went, "Oh, so glad you guys are here." So that's the story behind that part of the book. So the section of the book where you may recall Boyan is in the bush, and the black belts are fighting, and Olive is hiding behind the tree, and Boyan sort of chastised her because she's got plugs in her ears, and he's saying, "You can't even hear me with those things, and you ignored those gut instincts, and that I guess that gut intuition that something wasn't right." That comes from many different scenarios in my life before I really understood the importance of listening to your gut instinct and how wise our gut is. One particular situation still gives me chills today. So I was in the passenger seat. I was a very young adult, and the driver of the car and my friend went into a surf shop to buy something. What they were buying, I don't remember. It was a really hot day in Sydney, so the windows of the car was down, the radio was on, there were people everywhere, and I was just waiting for them to return. And from the corner of my eye, a man walked past, and instantly I felt uncomfortable, and I thought, oh, there's something creepy about that guy. But what happened straight afterwards is the thought in my head was, what are you worried about, Sarhn? You know, there's people everywhere around, sunshine, you know, what are you worried about? Don't be silly. And I ignored my gut intuition. And I even turned my back and I looked back over to see whether my friends were going to come back from the surf shop. Completely ignored. I don't know what time frame it was, but I think it would have been at least 2 minutes when all of a sudden a hand came through the window and tried to grab the keys in the car, tried to push me aside. It was an attempted carjacking, and the guy was trying to get in, and I quickly looked over again, and luckily my friends were coming over, saw the man, shouted, and he ran away. And I never forgot that, because my gut instinct told me that something wasn't right, and I ignored it. What I should have done is I should have wound up the window, put the air conditioning on, locked the car, turned off the radio, and just keep an eye on him. That would have been a better situation rather than ignoring my gut instincts. So that is why that is in the book. So we find out fairly earlier on in the book that Olive is dyslexic, and the reason for that I made the main protagonist dyslexic is because that is what I am. I am a dyslexic. And unlike Olive, I didn't find out when I was in primary school. She knew all the way through most of primary school and high school. I was actually made aware of the condition probably it was about the second year of university when the dean of the university actually pulled me aside and brought that to my attention, and I went, right, okay. So I really identify with Olive, and that's why I put a lot of those stories that I experienced at high school of teachers saying, Sarhn, you're not smart enough, or you're dumb, or you're being lazy, you're not trying hard enough. Didn't understand that my brain works differently. So all that I've learned now and understand about the brain and what I teach in the dojo and what I've experienced, huge, profound changes in children in my dojo's life, I've actually put in Mrs. Smith's advice to Olive in the chapter, the Hamlet chapter, where she talks about the importance of remaining calm. Your brain will work better if you're calm. If you're anxious or frustrated, your brain will not work as well. And this is not just for people who have a learning challenge. This is for all of us. If we can learn some of those meditation practices and breathing practices to lower the stress, our brain will work far much more better. And Mrs. Smith also spoke to Olive about cutting herself a break, not being so hard on herself. That's really important as well. And thirdly, she spoke about learning about how her brain works. Your brain is unique. You have, yes, challenges, but what you need to understand is that you have awesome abilities as well. Abilities that you share with others, and also abilities that you alone have. This is important. Hear my words. Great things are possible for all. Great things are possible for you. If you struggle in one area, don't worry about it. Cut yourself a break. Just keep chipping away at it, but focus on your strengths. And that was the last thing that Mrs. Smith had said to Olive. She had many strengths and abilities, and so do you. Okay, so thank you again for signing up to my newsletter. Love to hear from you. Tell me what your favorite characters were. I'd love to hear about that. Or you're an Olive fan, a Sebastian fan, or maybe you like to kick ass like Enat. share with me. I'd love to hear all about it. Maybe you want to tell me part of the section that you really liked, but also really keen to hear about what characters you'd like to maybe be more prominent, or maybe storylines you want to hear in book 2 or book 3. All right, Us, thank you again. And no doubt I will be speaking with you soon. Bye for now.